I had left corporate. I hadn't realised until I got there a second time that I had reached really bad burnout in 2013. I
Yeah.
knew that my body had been shutting down. I ended up having 7 months of like debilitating pain, hospital admittances. I was passing out on trains. I was passing out on train platforms and falling from the top of one escalator to the bottom and then getting myself up and still getting back to the office. But didn't, no days off, which I was still thinking, was my kind of badge of honor. Toxicity minus our sense of self equals burnout.
Failure is like everything else in life, it's just between
never fail.
I need to know to get to where I want to go.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Feck It No More show. Today, we have got Kelly Swingler with us. Kelly is a global burnout educator, and she's going to give us a little bit of an insight into those moments where we might be feeling burnt out. Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm excited to see where today's conversation will go. And how could I resist a podcast that is a Feck It No More, right? This is what more. So many of us are thinking this at the moment, right? So hopefully this will be a good one for people to listen to.
I think it applies to so many people in so many different aspects of life. And I think if we get through life with only one Feck It No More moment, we're doing okay.
Wrong,
but
right?
many of us has quite a few of them. And sometimes, I know for me, it happened to be the same one over and over again, which could be a bit challenging. So Kelly, tell us a little bit about your Feck It No More moment. What did that look like? When did it happen? What age? Kind of just talk us through from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, again, probably ironically, I've definitely had more than one Feck It No More moments, but I think the biggest one that turned around for me, really, I had left corporate. I hadn't realised until I got there a second time that I had reached really bad burnout in 2013.
Yeah.
I knew that my body had been shutting down. I ended up having 7 months of like debilitating pain, hospital admittances. I was passing out on trains. I was passing out on train platforms and falling from the top of one escalator to the bottom and then getting myself up and still getting back to the office.
Yeah.
But didn't, no days off, which I was still thinking, was my kind of badge of honor, right? I was doing all of this and never missed a day off work. And then I had to have 2 operations in 48 hours as a result of really what I then found out to be the stress that my body had been being put under. Went back into corporate, just was like, don't want to be here anymore. This is just not the environment for me. Started my own business and I suppose was, I don't know, was, dare I say, kind of blissfully unaware that I had experienced a first burnout and then ended up at burnout a second time. So that first one had made me really seriously ill. And I was living with the aftermath of health conditions after that. My second burnout quite literally nearly killed me. And again, with hindsight, what I had done was replace the toxicity and the busyness of corporate with the toxicity and the busyness of my own business.
Your own business?
And during that kind of 2-year period, I'd also left my marriage. I'd realised that wasn't for me anymore. I had moved house. I was living in a kind of then, I suppose, co-parenting with my ex-husband, which my sons didn't like. So I had lots and lots of stuff. Plus, I'm growing this business. I'm growing a team. I'm then kind of responsible for paying 3 or 4 people's mortgages. On top of my own, reached burnout for a second time, which again, I would still say I didn't even realise it was burnout for the second time. Mm-hmm. But where the change really came from, I received 2 phone calls within 48 hours. And the first burnout was to tell me that the woman that had replaced me in my corporate role had died in her room on her own whilst away on a leadership residential. And then I received another phone call 2 days later to tell me that I had been the 4th person to be in the role that I had been at within this work environment that had become really seriously ill. Now, I'd been out of there kind of 18 months, 2 years at that point. But that was like, how have we got to this point, right? How did I get to this point? How did I allow myself to get to that point? And I suppose just kind of like how had I also been completely oblivious to everything that had been going on, right? I just kind of kept moving on and moving on and moving on and moving on. And you said there, right? Making some of the same mistakes over again. And I was kind of doing that in different environments. But I think the news of, and I'm going to say, you know, when I received the phone call to say that Alison had died, I felt really numb initially, just like didn't know anything. And again, that's, you know, that's a very common sign of burnout, but I just felt kind of really numb. But it was that phone call 2 days later, and I was just like, I'm not doing this anymore. Like literally how, you know, and we weren't in, you know, I've got a son in the armed forces, right? We weren't on the front line, right? Fighting for country, fighting for freedom, fighting for any of that stuff, right? In it all intents and purposes, I was an HR director. I was, you know, an admin support function, if you like, right? I've been the fourth person to become really seriously ill in this HR director role. And the woman that has replaced me has died as a result of that job. Like there is something seriously wrong, broken, all of that kind of stuff. So that was the moment for me really where like just, no more. I need to do stuff differently. Absolutely.
And obviously now you've got the benefit of hindsight, Kelly, where you can look back. You said you didn't realize it at the time.
Yeah.
Was there any signals that you kind of picked up, or if if you were giving somebody some advice now at this stage with the benefit of your hindsight, what would you say they should be looking out for? What do you think maybe was some of the signals you missed at that time?
Oh, everything, right? And I think particularly if we look at, and this is why I think for me, I've spent 12 years joining the dots on this stuff and really getting underneath what burnout actually is and what it isn't. I think we look at the World Health Organization definition that was released or published rather in 2019 that tells us that burnout is this kind of workplace phenomenon, right, as a result of unmanaged workplace stress. And I think when I first saw that, I was like, that's not what it is. And by that point, I'd spent 7 years already kind of getting under the skin of this anyway. I was like, that's not
definitely
what
not. Doesn't sound right.
No. And then there was another research project that actually concluded in 2020 that tells us that we don't just have to be employed to experience burnout. Like it can come from anywhere. And I've also, in terms of doing this work, kind of created a burnout equation and I suppose a kind of burnout methodology that gives us all of that stuff. The biggest thing I think that the World Health Organization definition misses is the physical impact of burnout, right? If we just say it's unresolved stress, it's like, all right, then resolve the stress. But our body is quite literally screaming at us before we get to that point. And, you know, I said I was being admitted in and out of hospital. I was like debilitating pain. I couldn't stand up straight. I was like hunched over, couldn't stand without kind of like holding myself up on a table or a cabinet, or I needed, you know, somebody's arm to kind of keep me there. But there were also smaller signals. And I think so many of us make excuses for the smaller signals, right? The headaches that I was getting were because I hadn't drank enough water that day, or I hadn't had enough natural daylight. I hadn't, you know, I'd been on my screen too much. I'd, you know, not got enough sleep last night. So the daily headaches that were coming, I had need to get my eyes tested again. My glasses must need change, right? I had all these excuses for the headaches. When the digestive issues started to come, it must have been, you know, I had too much to drink at the weekend, or it was, you know, dodgy lunch that I had last night. Last night's dinner didn't agree with me. You know, it must have been all this stuff. So again, we start together and like our brains are wonderful things, right? Our brains are looking for reasons for it. And typically our brains will go for, you know, the most common and the most obvious answer. So it's kind of looking totally, so it's kind of looking for all these things. And then, you know, you get the tension in the body and the you know, chronic shoulder pain, chronic lower back pain that again I had reasons for. I must have done too many spin classes this week. I lifted too much weight at the gym last night. I slept funny. I needed a new mattress. You know, my bag was too heavy that I was carrying to the station. So all of those kind of things. And so if you're starting to experience the really early signs, will be things like headaches, sleeplessness. You will start to be getting kind of irate with people, you know, loss of temper, loss of concentration, not being able to focus properly. As we then kind of go on, and again, there is neuroscience really that explains why the closer we get to burnout, the more we don't realize that we're in it. And that's really because our brain is pushing us into survival mode, right? It's pushing us into that fight, flight, freeze or fawn, mostly into a survival state. And of course, if we were being chased by wild animals right now, we're not thinking, you know, well, now would be a really great time to, you know, just chill, have a picnic and a nice cold pint, right? Our brain wants to keep us on red alert and wants to keep us moving. And really that's what burnout does. And it keeps us going because really there is no reason on earth that our body would be experiencing that many that much physical and neurological stress unless we were
in
running for
such
our
a
life.
prolonged state.
Totally. We kind of, we get into that point. But I do think two of the biggest signs that I have seen, I've coached over 700 leaders in this space now. I'm training coaches from around the world in kind of understanding what to look for with burnout. I've trained doctors and therapists, and two of the biggest telltale signs, and I do not use the words that I'm going to use lightly. I know lots of people that will just kind of throw them around in lots of different ways. And I fully understand this, but they are addiction and withdrawal.
Yeah.
And when I say addiction, I mean addiction. I mean, it's, and it typically, yes, this is to do with work, but also work might be the reason that we are avoiding some kind of toxicity or some of the
Something
stuff
else
that's
in
going
that,
on over
yeah.
here. Totally. But we become addicted to the busyness.
Yep.
And it's the busyness and the toxicity that keeps us going. So we just keep going and pushing and keep going. So it's that. But again, when I say addiction, I'm not using that word lightly.
Yeah,
it really
no,
is. It's
I
the
know.
first thing we think about in the morning. It's all we think about all day. It's the last thing we think about at night. It doesn't feel safe for us to stop doing that thing. If I close my laptop, what if I miss a call? If I close my laptop, what if I miss that email from the CEO, or I miss that client proposal, or I miss that thing? So we just keep going, we keep checking. The second then really is withdrawal, and that is literally withdrawal from life, relationships, family, hobbies, all the healthy things that we used to do. So we become addicted to the busy, and we withdraw from life at the same time. And if you or anybody that is doing those two things simultaneously, I would say, burnout is pretty much knocking on the door. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Can I take you back to whenever you were in the corporate world and before your first burnout? Did you recognize that, I suppose, were you a driven person? And were you one of those type of people that kind of didn't switch off checking their emails throughout the evening, working whenever they get home from work? Was that, I suppose, in your work since, have you noticed a familiar type of person that is more, I suppose, has the potential for burnout as opposed to other people?
Yeah,
is there a certain
none of us
type
are
of
immune.
personality?
Yeah, none of us are immune. And I think that's a really important kind of point to talk about as well. None of us are immune to burnout. It can happen to absolutely any of us. But yes, if you are a kind of type A, people-pleasing high performer who is one of the, and this used to be my thing, right? So again, I said I had these 2 operations in 48 hours. They were for 2 different conditions, 2 different hospitals, 2 different consultants. I had to go for follow-up. But 48 hours. Like, so I don't recommend 2 anesthetics in that amount of time for anything. But we needed to, the issue needed to be fixed. When I'd gone for my follow-up appointments with both of these consultants, so again, completely separate hospitals, separate conditions, they both wanted to talk to me about stress, and they both mentioned the word burnout. And I can remember literally like pulling my face, like screwing my face up, rolling my eyes at these 2 medical consultants, because clearly they did not know what they were talking about. Because
stress.
I was the kind of person who thrived under pressure, right?
Who could
you want
handle
something
it all.
doing? Yeah, totally, right? You want something doing, give it to me because I will get it done. I was kind of, last minute deadline, like I can do anything, I can achieve goals, I can smash goals, I can do all this stuff. Put me in a high pressure environment, I am amazing,
I
right?
thrive on it,
Totally. So I'm like, no, right? That might be that person across the road, but not me, right? That is definitely not me. Like, I thrive in these situations. And actually, I remember saying to both of these consultants, I'm not even experiencing that much stress at the moment. And I think about it now. I had been in this organization for coming up to 3 years. It had been change after change after change after change. My team had already been restructured twice since I'd been there, as it was a result of one of these big 4 consultancies that were in running one of these organizational, one of these change
like
programs.
Doesn't usually just happen if things are going very well either. It's usually whenever
the organization was toxic anyway. The exec team were toxic. I was responsible at the time for 6 or 7 kind of multi-million-pound projects. Even my commute to and from work every day was at least 3 hours, like 90 minutes in each direction, sometimes more. I'm working ridiculous hours every day. And then on top of that, I've started to get all this kind of physical stuff that's happening. I look back and and I do, and again, this is there is the neuroscience behind all this, but I look back now and just think, I just needed a hug back then, right? And to be literally have a mirror placed in front of me, like, let's literally talk all of this through.
Let's have a look at this.
Yeah, totally right. We need to unpick all of this. But yeah, I just thought you know, my parents will say I came out of the womb kind of high performing, and I came out of the womb stubborn, and you know, had always been a high performer, had always been a high achiever. You know, I was moved up a year at school, went through all of my kind of GCSEs and A levels with a bit of a breeze. I was getting promotions when I joined into the workplace. That point, kind of up to that role that I had, you know, I'd had 7 promotions over an 8-year period and added over £100,000 to my salary during that time. Like you'd look at me and just, wow.
On paper, it was.
Yeah. You
Everything
just
was in
thought it was
place.
absolutely amazing. Yeah.
Look, the story resonates certainly with myself, because I had a similar experience where took up an executive role. Didn't really think I was ready for it, but the business thought I was ready for it.
Yeah.
And, you know, within the next 5 years, we had took the business from turning over 22 million to over 100 million, and it had tripled in size with people and responsibilities and issues and problems. I had convinced myself at one time that it's okay. I don't do pressure. I like challenges. I'm like, so no, I never feel pressure. I like challenges. I like figuring things out. I like succeeding. I like getting results. So the word stress was something I had convinced myself with, that it was just something that didn't apply to me, that it wasn't normal. And again, that can be the mindset. However, I certainly know that there was times, certainly my Feck It No More moment, whenever my friend passed away. And I decided that, okay, I didn't see my future in the corporate world anyway. It wasn't fulfilling me. It wasn't something that I felt very rewarded in doing. So it was a long-term plan that was going to be but certainly whenever I decided to start the business and walk away from it and realize just how busy and hectic my life was, it scared me. Because for the first maybe 3 months, I was sitting waiting on my phone to call, waiting on the bunch of emails to come in, and there wasn't, because nobody knew I'd started a business.
Yeah.
So it was a shock to the system to see going from being so in demand and dealing with so many problems a day to this is what kind of normal, relaxed life looks like. And I think at that stage, I noticed that, okay, I must have been getting close to some form of burnout in that space. So you have your second one. I'm guessing that's quite a shock. Did you decide then at that point there and then you were going to make changes, or was that a little bit further down the line?
No, it was literally the phone calls that did it. So again, I think I was in complete denial the second time round as well. And again, I think this is probably the thing. I think so. I had started to make some changes between 1 and 2 because I think I realized very quickly on, like, I had my first clients literally within weeks of starting my business. I just reached out to people to say, this is what I'm doing, and like had clients within weeks. Like I turned over well over 100,000 in my first year in business, just me. And in addition to that, you know, you get told you've got to do all the networking. You know, I was out at breakfast networking at 7 o'clock at night. I was networking until 10 o'clock at night. I was doing the admin, the bookkeeping, the marketing, the social media. We're trying to build the business. You know, I'm doing all of that, and you know, was doing that kind of 7 days a week. But again, you convince yourself, right? So I think in corporate, we kind of get to, you know, we kind of assume we've got to do this because we've got to earn the big salary, right? We've got to earn the big salary. We've got to earn the job title. And then I think often when you swap that then for your own business, well, I've got to do it, right? Because if I'm not working, I'm not earning, right? So then we kind of get ourselves into a different mentality. Well, at least I'm doing it for myself now.
Yeah.
And so, but I did, you know, I was very conscious of, I want to get back to my yoga every day. I want to be doing lots of stuff. And lots of people would talk about self-care and habits. And I've written and ranted quite a lot over the last few weeks about the amount of people that are talking about habit change when it comes to burnout prevention and burnout recovery. And I had all of the good habits, right? Yeah. I was doing yoga every day. I was meditating. I was drinking my water. I was walking the dog. I was doing a step count. I was eating a certain amount of vegetables. I was eating a certain amount of protein, right? Every single thing that we get told we have to do from a self-care perspective, I was doing it. Yeah. But when I look back on it again now, magic and power of hindsight, I wasn't actually doing any of those things. I wasn't in them.
Yeah.
it was an additional to-do list. So I've got this huge, I've got this huge business to-do list. I've got the family to-do list. I've got the son's to-do list. And then I've added this additional
Yep,
self-care, well-being habit list that I need to kind of, and I was, just kind of ticking it off. And, now my yoga practice now compared to what my yoga practice was, I started practicing yoga in 2009, but I had this kind
Yeah.
of, I suppose, 6-year phase where like, as long as I was on the mat, I was doing yoga. And now I'm actually in my yoga practice.
So you're
And
enjoying
so
the moment a lot more. Was
totally,
that just in
yeah.
the yoga, or was that in all aspects of life? Because I've certainly went through the phase where it's just the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing.
Yeah, it was
And
everything. Like if I was
yeah,
walking the dog, I would be walking the dog maybe whilst on a business call,
I'm
or I'd be
thinking what you
walking
were
the
doing
dog
there.
whilst filming content, or I'd
Yeah,
be, cooking dinner whilst listening to a podcast episode, or I'd be in the car on the way
yeah,
somewhere else, dictating
yeah,
into my voice notes all of my to-do list for the course of that day,
yeah.
everything that I was doing. And again, how often, because then we get celebrated, right, for being amazing multitaskers, don't we? Right? Oh, you're
Yeah.
amazing. Like, how do you get all of this stuff done? Oh, it's because, I'm
Mm.
hacking and I'm doing, 25
Yeah,
things at the
yeah.
same time, which is amazing. And so we celebrate and reward all of that stuff as well. And I think one of the biggest changes for me was to acknowledge that I needed to be present in whatever I was doing. Like if my sons
Yeah,
want a conversation with me, I need to be present in that I want to be present in that
yeah,
conversation. If I'm on my yoga mat, I want to be present in the yoga. If I'm
mm,
meditating, I want to be present in that. If I'm having a
mm,
bath, I want to be present in the bath, right?
yeah,
Whatever it is that I'm doing, whether I'm doing the weekly shop, whether whatever it is that I am doing, being present
you,
in that
in
moment.
that
And I
moment
think so many of us have lost the ability
to do
to
that.
be in the now because
I
we're
totally,
always somewhere else.
I totally agree, Kelly, and I think that's a really powerful message because, again, like I found myself going through 10 years. I stopped whenever my friend passed away, and I was like, okay, if I think about the last 10 years, how much was I really present and enjoying that journey as
Wow.
part of that journey? I'd achieved a lot of things. I had run 200-mile runs, I'd run 1,000 runs, or 1,000-kilometer runs. I had built up the business that I was working in, tripled my salary, had a good team that everybody thought, we had built a really great thing. But I was always looking for, how do we improve? How do we do it better?
Yeah.
What's the
Yeah.
next thing coming up? And
Yeah.
I really didn't stop to think, okay, what's really important in my life? I look back in them time, and I lost a lot of time with my kids that I should have been, instead of working all the time, I should have been
Oh,
certainly balancing it a little bit better, and
yeah.
making sure I was around home a lot more. And even, the things that I achieved in the endurance space, I should have at least savored it for a few hours after I'd finished something, rather than
Yeah,
just jump
and
straight into the next.
celebrate, right?
Yeah,
And because we don't do that, do we? Whether it is, congrats on all of those ones. I've done, I did a 300-mile cycle across Kenya, and I've done a few
yeah,
kind of
brilliant.
50-milers since. But yeah, but again, it was just like, even that was, I ticked it off the list.
It's
Like
just
I'd
a
done
tick.
it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like,
What's
that's a
next?
huge achievement, right? Those marathons, those runs, right, are absolutely huge achievements. And the fact that we don't celebrate them, we don't get present with them, we don't like, oh my, that was a huge achievement, right? And
Yeah,
kind of at least give ourselves credit for some of
yeah.
that stuff instead of, and I don't know if this was you, but it's like, right, okay, I've done that one. Like, what's the next run that I can do?
Mhm.
Like, what's the next
Yeah, that
distance?
was,
What's the
it was,
next,
how do I go
what's the next
further?
bit?
How do I go
Yeah.
longer? Or how do I make it
Yeah.
tougher? And that was certainly, I suppose I went down that rabbit hole, not just in the endurance space, but also in work as well. It was the exact same mindset. And I honestly, whenever I realized how short time was, I think was a big
Mm,
thing for me. Whenever I realized that we're not guaranteed tomorrow. We would
yeah.
like to think that tomorrow's going to be there, but we're not
Yeah.
guaranteed it. It comes and
Yeah.
goes. That was whenever I had to rethink my strategy. I was like, okay, I'm still driven. I still want to succeed. I still want to do well. However, I've now learned that I want to enjoy the process a lot more as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Do you
want to be
think
able to
you have
absorb.
defined or redefined kind of what that success might look like for you? Do you think you've got a different view of that now?
Totally. My success for me looks like right now just making sure that I have the time to do the things I enjoy,
Yeah.
and enjoy the process. That for me is happiness and contentment. And I suppose over the last 3 years, I've worked with hundreds of individuals in the coaching space in the mindset. And everybody, regardless of whether they know it or not, they're looking happiness and contentment, I believe. And that'll come in different forms, shapes, and sizes to other people. But figuring out what that happened for me, it was always spending more time with my family. And I thought the more I worked, the more time I would have, but that didn't work out. We've just become grandparents in the last 7 months, and
Congratulations.
yeah, I'm totally convinced that the moments that I'm able to steal with him, they're precious, and I just wish I had the foresight or the benefit of hindsight to see that with my own kids and spend a little bit more. Like, don't get me wrong, I spent a lot of time with my kids and I enjoyed every moment, but I think I could have done that better. That's what I probably should have focused on a little bit more.
Yeah, and again, I think that kind of misses us as well, doesn't it? Because I think in some ways, and again, I know for me, I was convinced, and I think it, very much was ingrained in me from school, I suppose, and particularly because I was a high achiever and I was a high performer and I had been moved up a year at school. It was like, you can do anything, right? You can keep working hard, you can keep studying, you can keep getting promoted, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. If you work hard, you'll get the nice house. If you work hard, you'll get the nice holidays. If so if you keep working hard, you'll get this improved quality of life. And don't get me wrong, there is, I don't know if you have it over there, but kind of rich house, poor house, right? I wouldn't want to be at a point where I'm kind of struggling financially. I think we do need to balance. But I was absolutely, I had twins at 20, very, very unexpectedly. So in addition to all of the stuff that I was doing, I was also mum of twin sons, right? And every single thing that I was saying, every promotion, I can now do more for my sons. Yeah, like this is all for my sons. I'm working this hard for my sons. I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. Like I said, I've got a son now in the army. Like my sons are doing brilliantly for themselves. They're mid-20s. They've got great jobs. They've got great relationships. They're happy. They enjoy life. They do all of that stuff. One of my sons used to absolutely love Monopoly, right? I've always hated it. It's one of those, because it's just like there's no end, right?
One of them things to ruin a family.
And I hated it. And he's got lots and lots of different versions of it and all this sort of stuff. And he used to be like, Mum, can we play Monopoly? Can we play Monopoly? And sometimes I'd be like, oh yeah, okay, fine. But a lot of the time it was like, I've got work to do. I need to do the shopping. I've got to do the housework. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. I've got to do the other. And then like the asks of, can we have a game of Monopoly stopped? The same as you only get a certain amount of time for like bedtime stories, don't you? You only get a certain amount of time for kind of handheld in the park or pushing on the swings. And I think we all think we've got time for that. And, I said to him, he came back a couple of weeks ago on leave and he just sort of sat there and he's like, oh, like, don't worry. I was like, shall we play Monopoly? And he's like, no, Mum. But honestly, like that's now my thing for him because I knew how much he loved it. I would genuinely give anything for one more day of like, Mum, can we sit and play Monopoly? And I would just drop everything. So I am now, I'm like, if ever he wants a game of Monopoly, I'm there.
You're
like, literally there. Yeah.
I'm the same. I put everything on hold if I get an opportunity. My daughter contacted me yesterday and says, do you want to go to the park? We're going up to the park for a few hours. I'm like, let's do it. Everything's on hold and I'm able to do it. And look, for me, I'm lucky I also intentionally scheduled or kind of worked to achieve that life because
same.
I could easily have stayed in the 9 to 5, taking the high salary, doing the same thing, but it was being prepared to actually go, no, I want to make the changes so I can have that type of a life.
Yeah.
And I think that's important whenever we're going through that. I want to get back to the burnout. You've done a lot of work with a lot of people and you've put in a lot, you've joined a lot of dots as you put it.
I have, yeah.
What's some of the surprising things that you came across that you thought, oh, I wasn't really expecting that?
In terms of research or the work or some of the conversations?
Either or. Was there anything that stood out to you that you thought, I wish I had knew that earlier?
Yeah, so I think I kind of alluded to the fact earlier, I've got what I call a burnout equation. And the burnout equation is that toxicity minus our sense of self equals burnout. And I don't know where I got it from. I don't know where I'd mapped it out. I don't know anything. But every single person now that I share that with, every stage that I speak on and mention it, every coach training, every individual, like that's it. And I think, when I think about toxicity, and we mentioned earlier, it doesn't just have to be workplaces.
True.
Toxicity can be work, it could be friendships, relationships, it could be habits, it could be thoughts, it could be not being present, it could be foods or drink or whatever, right? But the toxicity, and if it is toxicity that causes it, now sometimes we don't know who we are, right? We've both spoken about corporate, and I think a lot of the time I see so many people, and again, I had this, I left corporate, and as I said, I was very lucky that, business was making quite a lot of money quite quickly. But I remember in the first couple of months of business being asked to go and do a talk for a big bank. And I was like, amazing, right? And I was like, I've been speaking on stages for years anyway, as part of the job. Like, this is amazing. Like, this will be my first solo one. I had a panic attack in the car on the way to this thing and literally had to pull over, because I realized I was no longer like Kelly, the exec director with the big brand name behind her, right? It was just me. And it was like nobody wants to listen to just me.
Nobody wants my story.
Yeah. So we kind of, our identity, I think, gets so wrapped up in that. So actually, like, who are we? I think that's the kind of biggest thing that I've looked at, like, who are we? Because again, a lot of us, you just mentioned being a grandparent, and, we get born into families that are like, these are our values, this is how we behave, this is how we think, this is what we do, right? We go into schools that tell us these are our values, these are the behaviors, this is our charter or promise or whatever, this is what you must sign up to. We go to colleges, universities, workplaces. These are our values. These are the behaviors. This is what you must sign up to. And we go, yeah, okay, fine. Yeah. And then I think we have a feck it no more moment, or we reach burnout, or something happens and we're like, we don't recognize who we are. And I think that sense of self piece, we don't necessarily have to know who we are. Yeah. But I think if we get to the point of burnout, the burnout is telling us that whatever we are doing is not aligned to that sense of self. Right. Yeah. There is a misalignment.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So I think that's been one of the biggest things for me, right? It's that toxicity. And if we lose that sense of stuff, lots of people thrive in toxic workplaces all the time, right? And they still keep that really strong sense of self. But if we just don't have that. So I think that was the biggest thing for me, right? That is literally like, burnout is telling us this is not for you. There is something's
not aligning.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So whenever you would work with people in the time since, or even the coaches that you're training, what's your recommendation for people where they maybe know there's that toxic impact in their lives, whether it's work, whether it's relationships, whatever the case, and they're at that burnout stage? What can they do to help themselves get out of that or overcome that?
I mean, the easy answer, right? The easy answer to say to this is just get out. Right. Just get out, remove the toxicity, whether it's the workplace, whether it's the marriage, whether it's whatever, right? Just get out. I think that's the easy answer to everybody. And at the same time, it's not always the easy answer.
It's always the hardest thing to do.
Yeah. And, I've worked with clients who know that they are at severe burnout. They've been off with severe burnout. They know that they need to get out of this place, but either financially or career-wise, or the impact on future pension or locality or whatever. Yep. They're just like, I've got to keep going for 2 years. I need 5 years more. I need whatever. And of course, you can have the argument with them, like, is this really worth five more years of your life? Is this really worth the next 2 years of your life? And just the stuff that we've been talking about, right? Days at the park and Monopoly. Like, don't you want more of that stuff? Yeah. And at the same time, that's not an easy choice for everybody. Job markets change and job markets shift, if you are going to lose tens or even hundreds of thousands with a pension, you're like, I just need to keep going for 2 years or 5 years. If that is your driver, we've got to find a different way around it. So almost like, if you know that you've got to stay within that toxicity, the work that needs to be done is on building that sense of self, getting really clear. Yeah, almost like, I know why I'm doing this, right? I'm doing this because of my values or my morals or my ethics or my family. Exactly. Yeah. Get the purpose in there and really build that sense of self. So what do you need to be doing even more to top yourself up? What do you need to be doing to keep yourself whole? What do you need to be doing to keep yourself motivated, to get you out of bed in the morning, to allow you to thrive in this toxic place? We've got to kind of get to that point.
Yeah,
totally. Yeah. Because as I said, I think the easy answer for everybody is, we'll just leave. It's not that easy for everybody,
no,
and I think we've got to be realistic about that.
I totally agree. Like, I know in my circumstance, I have stayed in jobs because I had to, for the reason at the time, whether it was because it was close to home and I wanted the
Yeah.
extra family time, or
Yeah.
whether it was, as you said, that extra few dollars in the bank or pounds in the bank to keep going. And I had that exact same story. I in the corporate world, and I was like, do you know what? I can do this job until I'm maybe 60, make some
Yeah.
money, set myself up, and then go into what I want to do, which is
Yeah.
coaching and mentoring people. That was the story in my head at the time. And I was, I had became okay with that because I had given myself a timeline, and
Yeah.
because I could see an end point. I think it's easier to struggle through hard times if you can see an end point. If you can't see an end point, it's a lot harder because you don't know where it's going to end. And I had said another 10 years and then I'm out of here. But it was whenever Jean died, told me he had 6 months to live. That was the part that goes, okay, I maybe haven't
Yeah.
got 10 years of my life. So
Yeah.
that was what it was for me. So I always encourage people, look, if it's difficult, if it's hard at the time, certainly the way we perceive, and I suppose I'm interested to get your thoughts on this. But for me, burnout was, I think it can also be a lack of that passion or that drive to do something. I don't know if you've ever come across the kind of study, I think it was the Navy SEALs or something, where they did a study and they reckon whenever people are at total breaking point, total burnout, they believe that everybody has like 60% left in the tank at that stage. Did you ever come across anything like that? I know whenever I was training for the endurance stuff and the long distance, 200 miles, 350-kilometer type races, I was very interested in what was breakout or burning point, or the point where you just can't go on. I suppose I chased that for quite a few years from an endurance perspective, not from a mental perspective. And it was that whenever we think we can't go anymore from a physical point of view, we've about 60% left in the tank at that
Yeah.
stage.
There is always something left until
That was
there
very
isn't,
interesting for
ultimately.
me.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's where I believe that if people can see this is where I have to get to, they can find a way that can do it. Now, they can make it very hard for themselves and just continue to do what they're doing, or they can kind of come up with some new tools and new techniques from a mental aspect to make things easier. What would you say is some of them, that mental kind of shift that you have noticed over the years in maybe yourself, but again, with the people that you work with, what would you recommend they kind of focus on in that mental space?
Yeah, again, I think it is, and you're right about timeframes. If we know we've got to get through something for the next 3 weeks, the next 3 months, the next 3 years, we 9 times out of 10, I suppose, right? We can dig in deep and we can get to that space. I think, and we talked about this at the beginning, didn't we? Many of us don't recognize that it is burnout until we're kind of past
Too
that
late.
point, right? We've been in burnout, and then we're kind of coming through the other side, and we're like, oh my God, what was that thing that I've just experienced?
That
And
nasty
it's
experience.
yeah, and it's usually the kind of second or third time that we're like, hang on, I've been here before. I think now this is burnout.
I'm
And
definitely going to learn this time.
yes. And we said, right, sometimes we keep repeating the same habits over again. And some people are living in this habitual burnout cycle again for lots and lots of different reasons. I think what I see and have been seeing repeatedly over the last probably 10 years, more so over the last 6 since kind of lockdown and COVID and everything that happened in 2020, we all are like, we can get through this, right? For however long it is. But what lots of people are doing at the moment is like the goalposts just keep moving, right? I will make the change when the summer holidays come. I will make the change when Christmas comes. I'll make the change when New Year comes. I'll make the change next summer. I'll make the change when we move house, when we've got the new kitchen, when the kids are off school, when the kids have gone to university, when the kids have moved out, when the kids are married, when I become a grandparent. We keep moving the goalposts. And I think from that perspective, that's where it gets really, really difficult, right? If you genuinely know, I have to stay in this job for the next 2 years because I need my pension at the end of it. That's the 2 years. That's my cutoff. Now I'm going to go and do something different. But if you are pushing and giving everything for 2 years, and you get to the 2-year point, you think, actually, I'm not ready. I don't want early retirement. I'm going to do another 3 years. It's that kind of 60% will deplete during the rest of those 3 years. So we do have enough to kind of get through us. And again, I think I mentioned, some of the health conditions that my burnout had caused for me. September 2024, Started to experience really debilitating pain again, to the point I couldn't move. Started to have loads of tests. Was going through all sorts of stuff, and was told by 3 different consultants, you need an urgent operation.
Yeah.
With healthcare the way it is, kind of here in the UK, it was like you've got an 18-month wait. And I knew, like, I haven't got 18 months in me. I do not have 18 months in me. And reached out to a therapist. Like, I was going to a really, really dark place at some points last year. I was reaching out to my therapist. I was getting help from my partner. I was like, right, I need some changes. We've got to do this. Like, if I've got 18 months, I've got to find a way to get through this. And it got to a point, I'd gone to see another consultant last August, and he's like, right, we can move you through a different kind of pathway, but it's still going to be a 6-month list.
Wait.
And I cannot do another 6 months of this. And so, my partner and I had a conversation about it. Like, every pound of what we had accrued, kind of saving wise last year, went on my surgery to get me to where it was that I needed to be. Now, I can, and even just thinking about it now, to know that I would have, through one pathway, another 12-month wait, I would not have been able to survive another 12 months. And lots of people go, well, of course you could, like, if you really needed to. Like, I was at I'm drawing the line. I genuinely can't do this, because of the impact it was having on me mentally, physically, and emotionally. And it was all, and I think, again, that's kind of one thing. If it was just mental, maybe physically I could have carried myself through. If it was just physical, maybe mentally I could have carried myself through. If it was just mental and emotionally, I could have carried on going. I could have pushed myself through. But I think when it impacts everything, is like, what, like, I can't live like this. This isn't living. This isn't doing anything. I can't get on my yoga mat. I can't walk the dog. I can't do any of the stuff that I know I need to do to kind of keep me moving. I worked, 25 days I worked over the course of kind of 15 months, because work was too much. Everything was too much hassle, too hard, too painful, too difficult, all of that stuff. And, I think if we kind of translate that to a burnout perspective, we can all find something. We can get to a point where we can find the solution. We can find the right answer. Maybe there is that kind of Feck It moment where it's like, okay, right now I need to make the change. This is what I need to do to change this stuff, or kind of get it through it. But we will all have more until we don't. And I think ultimately, if we think about burnout, like, burnout is literally like our body, our nervous system, our brain being like, right, we're now in default, right? We're in serious kind of battery level energy reserves. We are now only going to do what is absolutely critical for your survival. And if that means staying in bed for the next 6 weeks, drinking water,
that's what you're doing.
Then that's all we're going to do. And it is that point. But again, it will depend on the situation. If you are a Navy SEAL that has got to keep on going because of your life, your actual life, your fight for survival, the survival of your team and everybody else that you're there with, you're going to find it in the tank to keep on going, keep on going, keep on going.
But that doesn't mean the burnout's not coming.
Exactly, right. But when you're home from that tour, something's coming after.
The downtime. I totally agree.
And same with your marathon, right? Lots of marathon runners will talk about that kind of marathon blues that comes afterwards, right? And again, it's the thing, if we think about it, your body's going through all that stress, all that adrenaline, all those neurochemicals, your body, like, none of us are designed, right? Even for a 26.2 mile marathon, right? We're not designed to be running 26.2 miles. Like, who does that? That's ridiculous. And yet there is something within our body, because we find the adrenaline, we get ourselves over the wall, we keep ourselves going, we keep ourselves training, we get ourselves across that finish line. We had London Marathon here a couple of weeks ago, all over the TV, right? People passing out, not being able to move, legs giving way, and somebody, complete stranger, comes up behind them, picks them up and gets them across that finish line, right? That point is what we need. And whether it comes immediately after the race, or a day later, or 2 days later, or a week later, or a month later, and you're like, again, that's that shutdown. Now, again, it's for a different reason, for a different thing, but it's the same thing.
Yeah. And I think going back to your comment where we keep moving the goalposts, like, we might be able to, our conscious mind, take in and say, okay, I'll just do it for another 2 years, or I'll just, I'll keep going for another little while. And our conscious mind might go, I can do this. But somewhere in our subconscious mind that's attached to every cell in our body, it's going, no, I'm actually calling the shots here, and we're done with this. We're not doing any more.
Our bodies can only take so much stress. Again, our bodies are amazing, but ultimately, kind of where into, and I genuinely believe the illnesses, the conditions that I've lived with, the operation that I had to have last year, I know with every ounce of my being, they could have been avoided if my body had not been under that amount of intense stress for the amount of time that
For
it was
so
under,
long.
right? You know,
Yeah.
and I'm probably forever going to be living with the consequences of that now.
Yeah.
I think, you know, and again, we underestimate the power of recovery. We underestimate all of that stuff. And again, as we both started, right, we achieve a goal, we're on to the next one. We achieve a goal, we're on to the next one. You finish a marathon, what's the biggest one I could do? How can I make it harder, faster, you know, different terrain? How can I make it hotter? How can I make it longer? How can I make it stronger? All of that stuff. Again, there's different training that needs to go into that. There's different programs, there's different thought processes, different mindset, different ways that you need to be looking after your body, different fuel that you'll be putting in, probably different hydration, different sleep patterns, all of that stuff. And of course, all of that happens. But for the majority of us, and again, particularly with burnout, it literally is like, you know, a 200-mile marathon without a break and then another 200-mile marathon. Like, we're not just training for it. We're actually running the next 200-mile marathon and then the next 200-mile marathon and the next 200-mile marathon. Think about what that does to your heart, your nervous system, your kidneys, your liver, your muscles, your bones, you know, your brain,
Especially with the
every
toxic
single part of you. Yeah.
Especially with the toxic influence in there. And that's certainly, you know, I think one of the key elements, because that toxicity in whichever form it comes in, whether it's work, whether it's relationships, whether it's just the thoughts that we have internally ourselves, that is definitely doing a lot of strain on the body and the cells in our body.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, if we think about it from, you know, from your perception of marathons, that is like mentally the kind of toxicity is, you know, I don't know, eating a McDonald's or a KFC every day, drinking as much alcohol as you can every night, and, you know, telling yourself, I can't do another 200 miles. I can't do another 200 miles. Like mindset, you know, everything that you're putting in, not sleeping, not talking, you know, surrounding yourself by people that are like, you've got no chance, you know, Glenn, you're not going to run, you know, you've got no chance of getting over the finish line. You're like, well, you know, it's that, and still going on and running the marathon. Right. If we think about it, and I've mentioned this in my books before, I think lots of us, that toxicity, particularly if we look at, you know, if it is workplaces that are contributing to that burnout, most workplaces are kind of sprinkling on kind of a little bit of well-being, which is a meditation class. Here's your meditation app. Here's your step tracker or whatever. Whilst literally the environment is like one of like a 60-year-old, 60 a day smoker that lives on fat and grease, doesn't sleep, sits watching TV all day, sits moaning and kind of doing all that stuff. And we go, but he does meditation for 10 minutes on a Saturday morning. Kind of here you go with it. And that's what the majority of workplaces are doing. Of course, then if we carry on that in our own businesses, and then we're kind of doing that, and we think, well, but you know, but I do my yoga class on a Saturday morning, so I must be healthy. You know, everything's okay. Yeah, it's just not doing it. You know, and I talked about the habits earlier. Healthy habits, healthy mindset, healthy thoughts are amazing at stress reduction. Burnout is not just stress; it's so much more than that. And yet, when we are happy and healthy humans, when we are happy, healthy and sustainably healthy, high performing humans, we can absolutely avoid burnout when we have that strong sense of self, when we are eliminating all of that toxicity. And the toxicity becomes either easier to cope with or easier to eliminate when we have that strong sense of self. So all of that kind of spirals. Healthy habits can be amazing, of course they can, and they allow us to be happy and healthy. But if we're just assuming, like I did, that, you know, we've got 15 things on the to-do list every day, that makes me healthy and therefore everything's going to be okay, we can still very much be on track for that next burnout.
Yeah. So let's say for the people that are out there that are thinking, oh God, I wonder, am I on track for a burnout? What should we be looking out for? What should we be introducing more into our lives to try and...
I mean, we've mentioned some of it already, right? I think some of the joy, the stuff that you love to do, right? I kind of I do what I call kind of once a month, I do like a bit of a toxicity audit, right? What is kind of not working for me? And maybe that is, I don't know, I realized I was spending too much time on my Instagram and I bought an app blocker and was like, I don't want to be on Instagram anymore. And I've got to the point, even my app blocker is not stopping me scrolling on it. So guess what I've done? I've deleted my Instagram. You know, so it's that kind of stuff. And we will have it. You know, my partner's like, I don't spend that much time on my phone. And then I said to him the other day, like, show me, I want to see how much time you're spending on your phone. Because every time I have a conversation with him lately, he's like that on the sofa. I'm like, show me your hours and what apps you're, and he's like, I hadn't realised it was that much. So I think we can do little audits. Now, again, we might not say, toxicity, I think we think has got to be something really terrible, but ultimately it's the stuff that is just draining us, right? It's the stuff that's not good for us. So is that scrolling too much on your phone? Is that watching too much rubbish TV? Is that not sleeping properly?
Too late.
Not drinking properly? All of that stuff. But the flip of that, what is that? What is spending all of that time doing stopping you from doing? Is it stopping you from having another game of Monopoly? Is it stopping you from going to the park? Is it like, what's that stuff? How can you bring in more of that?
More of the things you enjoy.
Yeah, because that's the stuff that brings us back to us, right? That's the stuff that makes us present. And that's the stuff that gets us in the moment. That's the stuff that is, gets us to ask those questions, right? Is this what I really want to be doing? Is this really where I'm going? Is this really what I want my work or my career to look like? Is this what I want my marriage to look like? And I think we're losing the ability to kind of really ask ourselves lots of those questions because it's, in many ways, I think we've lost the ability to be bored, right? We're on constantly, like I said, whether it's podcasts, whether it's I don't know, scrolling on phones, whether it's apps, whether it's work, whether it's something, that ability to just kind of sit and think. Yeah. Like, when was the last time you listened? Woman I follow, a woman called Katie Skelton. She does kind of email marketing.
Yeah.
But she writes brilliant emails. And she'd put a post yesterday, like, for the first time yesterday morning, she listened, or over the last couple of days, has listened to an entire album from start to finish, right? In the way that album was designed to be listened to. Not jumping on a Spotify or an Apple Tunes or kind of playlist, but start to finish on an entire album. And I have, over the last kind of couple of years, got really back into my vinyl again because actually I put vinyl on and it plays. I think, I haven't heard this song for ages, or it's like, the album's finished. And so even those things, like, when was the last time that you listened to an entire album from start to finish? When was the last time that you were so engrossed in a book without picking up your phone in the middle? When was the last time that you went for a run without recording yourself for your Instagram stories, or like, hey, I'm at 10K now, aren't I amazing, right? Any of that kind of stuff, all of the answers are there. And I think the more that we can do that, the more capable we are of removing that toxicity and just being really, really clear on who we are and what we want and the direction that we want to go in.
I think that's a really powerful message, Kelly. And I totally agree. The fact of, and it's a skill. I do believe it's a skill that we can train ourselves to do, because I've had to do it, to just stop and go, what's going on in my life? What am I thinking? How am I feeling? Just that check in, that audit that you've mentioned, being able to ask ourselves, what's working well in my life? What's not working well in my life? What do I need to change? What do I need to improve as an important skill?
And I will say, can I just quickly add there? I think what's also important to remember is, I think we're seeing burnout as becoming normal, right? We're all burnout. Like, we're all burnt out, we're all exhausted, we're all running on empty. And I think it's almost kind of that complacency. Just because it is becoming the norm, it doesn't make it normal. And again, like we said, I just got to carry on doing this for 2 years. I just got to get through to Christmas. I just got to get through winter. I've just got to kind of do whatever. Almost that kind of apathy and that complacency is what's causing so many of us to kind of be spending so much time scrolling on our phones and disconnecting from our lives and our relationships anyway. And I think the more of those moments that it is, is this what I want? Is this where I thought I'd be by now? Where do I want to be? Like, genuinely, where do I want to be by the end of this year, right? 6 months from now, where do I want to be? How do I want to be feeling? What do I want to be doing? Even just those things can make a big difference, because I do think so many of us now, and again, if we look at kind of burnout peaks and troughs and the searches for burnout, all of that stuff, it's telling us something. And a conversation with a Claude or a Chat GPT or a Google search is it's really not giving us the answer. Because again, if you speak to any of those things about burnout, it's going to tell you burnout is these 3 things as classified by the World Health Organization. You just need to stop being stressed at work. It's not, but so much bigger. But we have to get back to ourselves. That's ultimately the thing that we need to be focusing on. And if you are just thinking, well, like, this is just it, right? I've just got to carry on with the job. I've just got to do the, it's like, it might not be great, but it's also not awful. Even that kind of mindset is telling you something, right? Something has to change.
I think the mindset of, it's just the way it is. It's not terrible. It's not great. I think it's a very sad way to live a life. And I suppose for so many of us, that's really what we tell each other, your life
Yeah.
isn't that bad. But I think
Yeah.
if we're just settling for an okay life, we're probably not doing ourselves really justice. We want to be certainly enjoying it as much as possible. I think
Absolutely.
there's a
It's
lot
here
to
for
be,
living, right?
there's
It's
a,
here to be lived.
Mm. And before too long, it'll be gone. Time
Yeah.
goes very, very fast, as I discover every year.
Yeah.
I believe that if we can focus on what we truly want, as in, and again, in my experience, talking to the people I've dealt with in some form or other, it's some form of something that'll give us more happiness or give us more contentment. It's usually one of them two. If we can focus on what that is internally within ourselves and go, how do I get more of that in my life? What does actually make me happy? I think that distraction, and as you said, if we can put that singular focus and enjoy every moment that we're achieving that, it brings us closer to that point where I suppose the burnout has got less of a chance of happening. Because
Yeah.
what that usually means, where a lot of people thinks the harder I go or the faster I go or the more I do gets me to that happiness point, it's
Mhm.
usually quite the opposite is what I found. The
Yeah.
more that we can slow things
Yeah.
down, the more we can enjoy the process. And I work with a lot of leaders, and I think leaders have got a big responsibility, as do the organizations as well. You mentioned it earlier that we sprinkled a little bit of dust on and say we're doing our part. I think leaders, especially those that are wanting the better results, and usually
Mhm.
that's what business and leaders is about. How do we get better results? I think if they can understand that, the more they can set the example to the people that work in their team about being able to manage their time and being able to manage their approach, that they're not burning out. I have worked for a few leaders in the past before. One of them told me, Glenn, look, we think you're doing too much. We think you're going too hard, and we're conscious that you might be online for a burnout. And
Yeah.
I don't think that probably happens enough in organizations. Now, it was
Right.
something
Definitely
I
not.
appreciated. It was something I appreciated at the time. And I think I might have said, no, don't worry, I'm all fine and I'm in control, which a lot of type A type of people do.
Mhm. Yep.
But I think leaders and organizations have a big part to play in this. But I would emphasize that, and I think you might agree, that ultimately it comes down to the person themselves. They need to be able to spot the signs and be able to take control of
Yeah, and I
what
do
they're
think it
doing
is
in
a
terms.
mix of both, right? I think burnout is the
Mm.
outcome of something, right? It's the outcome of the
Yeah.
toxicity. It's the outcome of the loss of self. A lot of leaders, not all of them, as you said there, you work with a great one
Mm.
that was like, we're spotting some signs. We think you need to make some changes. I worked earlier on in my career. I wanted to be able to work from home extra hours, right?
Yeah.
Lots of my colleagues were being given kind of laptops, and I was
Yeah.
speaking to the CEO like, I need a laptop as well. He's, I'm not giving you one because then you work from home, right? If you like,
You'll
when
never
you're
switch
not in
out.
the office, you switch off, right? You go. I had one leader, when I kind of got my seat at the table, she'd replied to me. I was checking for some board papers about 11 o'clock one night. She sent an email to me. I replied. She said, never reply outside of hours because it will become expected. I'm emailing
Yeah.
you now because I left the office at 4 to go and spend the evening with my son. I'm catching
To
up on
go
my
and do an
emails because
extra
this
couple of
works for
hours.
me. Like,
Yeah.
you're not going to get into the habit of doing this. So there is absolutely a responsibility. I do think, again, if we come back to toxic workplaces and toxic high performance, we've already said, right, the closer that we get to burnout, the more we focus on work, the more,
Yeah.
almost like the more conscientious we come. And that's not because we become more conscientious. That's because we are in panic of what happens if it all goes wrong, right? So we are working 24/7 because what if the next email, what if the next phone call, what if?
What if
So
we
we're
don't
in that
control
state
it?
of
Yeah.
survival. Lots of leaders are getting a lot of extra work and a lot of extra
Done.
stuff done from people that are experiencing burnout. Lots of
Yeah.
organizations are getting additional work done from people that are too terrified to switch off their
To take it
laptop at the
easier.
end of the day. But from people that are worried. But I had one client who was like, I every single night, we've talked about kids a lot during this, right? But every single night I'm at home, regardless, to read my daughter a bedtime story.
Yeah.
She wasn't present for any of it. She got her daughter to the point of getting her daughter to read the story. She's got her phone hidden under the pillow, checking her mobile, whilst her daughter's reading her bedtime stories every night. But in her head, I'm present for bedtime every single day. That organization is getting tens of hundreds of hours additional from her all of the time. She literally never switches off. Her sleep is deteriorating. and she's working harder and she's being rewarded for it, right? I mentioned earlier, over an 8-year period, I had 7 different promotions and I added over £100,000 to my salary. Now you could say, well, that's me getting the reward for it. But every single one of those promotions, I then felt I needed to work even harder for the salary, even harder for the job title. I've got to keep doing this. So actually lots of leaders are in effect benefiting from burnout growing and thriving within their organizations. And actually what we do need are more leaders like you had or like I had that are like, I'm not giving you a laptop because you're not working. And this was obviously years ago, like this is how we work now. But we need leaders that say, Glenn, I'm really worried about you because I think you're displaying some burnout. We need to have a conversation. Or Kelly, I'm not giving you a laptop because I don't want you working outside of office hours. Or just because I email you at 11 o'clock at night, you do not respond.
We don't want
I'm doing it because it works for me, not for you. That's more of the leadership that we need. Because again, that loss of sense of self, again, we've mentioned it already in the conversation. If our identity becomes wrapped up in the what we do,
just
like
work.
I am the exec director, I am the director, I am the manager, I am the this, I am the that, I am the other. If our identity becomes all consuming about a job and all of that toxicity then becomes to just overwhelm, burnout's happening. Now, again, I've talked about my illness. I started by saying that the woman that replaced me had died. The organisation had replaced both of us within weeks.
Oh, yeah. That's one sure thing. Yeah.
It's
3 weeks.
our families that miss
replacement.
out. Yeah, right. It's our families that miss out. It's our friends that miss out. It's the people that we love, the people that we say we're doing this for.
Yeah.
Right. My sons had said to me after these 2 operations in 48 hours, I was on the sofa. This was 2013. I was on the sofa. I'd watched back-to-back daytime chat shows all day, right? As you could do at the time. Like, I'm sure there was like 24s, like it was all of them. I've had a day on the sofa watching this. Yeah. You know, my son's come home from school. Again, remember like the people that I said I was doing this for, their faces dropped when I walked in, or when they walked in. And my response was, don't worry, like mum's going to be like, everything's going to be fine, right? Mum's going to be back at work soon. Because that was my response, right? We measure how healthy we are by how soon we can get back to work. And that was the response that I gave my sons. My sons were 12 years old. They took one look at each other, came and sat on the coffee table in front of me. And they said, but mum, we don't want you to go back to work. Your job is killing you.
Yeah.
Right. My sons could see what I had been unable to. My sons could see what nobody else was able to. And yet at my work, I was still being rewarded and my work were being rewarded for the amount of work
encouraged
I
to
was
do
doing.
more.
Totally.
And I totally agree. I think that responsibility on the businesses and on the leaders is huge. And, you know, I know there's more bad ones that encourage that type of behavior than the ones that don't. But I do know there's a few more becoming a lot more conscious of it.
There are, and we need more of those. We need more of those.
I work with a few businesses and they are very mindful of making sure that, because again, if it can start from the top down and if the director or the CEO or the main people have experienced it themselves in life, they're more likely to be mindful of it for the other people. And again, for me, it comes back to if we have people that aren't burnt out in our organizations, we're going to achieve better results in the long run.
Absolutely.
You know,
It's the results speak for themselves.
Yeah. So for me, just like I'm very much a results focused person. So if I think that by encouraging people to have a better work-life balance and have a more downtime, it's going to bring a better performance, it's going to bring a higher service to our clients, then that's what we should be encouraging. I think some leaders just get caught up in a very old, toxic mindset that can impact. Kelly, I really do appreciate your time and I'm very conscious of your time. So I really do appreciate your insights today on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure. I love your energy. I love your passion about burnout. I can see that it's something that means a lot to you. So thank you so much for sharing that insight with us. Kelly, where can our listeners find you? Where can they get to know more about what you do?
So I suppose from a social platform, an online platform, best place to find me would be LinkedIn. I am still the only Kelly Swingler on there. So you'll be able to find me on LinkedIn. And if you do want to, I suppose if you want to find out more about kind of what I'm doing or sign up for updates or any of that stuff, then my website, so kellyswingler.com. So yeah, and I'm the only one of those as well, so that's all good.
That is, it's a bit like my own name. There's not too many Glenn Monaghans either.
No.
Kelly, are you okay if people leave some questions for you in the comments?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I'm again usually said, right, this is what I do. This is what gets me out of bed. I can talk about this all day, every day for as long as there is, and I will answer any questions as they come.
I absolutely love that, and hopefully we will be able to get you back on maybe in the future to talk some more.
Yeah, amazing. Would love to. Thank you very much, and thanks for inviting me today. It's been lovely chatting.
No, I really do appreciate your time, Kelly. Thank you so much. Keep being awesome.
Thanks. You too.
No worries.
And now for the legal part. I'm not a registered mental health professional. I'm just some guy who has gone through life, that's dealt with a lot of issues, and that has really wanted to move his life from where it was to where he wanted to go. And along that journey, with my own personal development, with my own growth, I've done a lot of research and studying into what it takes to get us to a better place, what it took to get me to a better place. I've also done a certificate in results coaching that qualifies me to coach other people in terms of improving their lives. But I want to stress, regardless of whether you go to a mental health professional or whether you go and talk to a friend down the road or whether you reach out to the Feck It No More team, the onus is definitely on you to help improve your life. And I want to thank you for showing up today, for listening, for getting involved. That shows that you care about your growth and your development and getting you to a better place. And I really appreciate the time that you have taken to reach out. So until the next time, I'll be waiting. I'll be available to help, support, as I know majority of our community will be too. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for you showing up.